It's Michelle Dittmer here. Believe it or not, I've been hit with something hard in my throat. So instead of recording a unique podcast for this week, I went back into some of the pre-recorded conversations I had, and I found an absolute gem to share with you this week. Now, although it was recorded pre-COVID-19, there's so much wisdom in what Max has to share about his gap year, and it's almost even more pertinent than ever. He shares messages about taking the time to figure out who you are, who you want to be, and having some really meaningful projects. Now, Max's gap year was not all based around travel. So in our new COVID situation, there's so much to be gained from his experience and his wisdom and all the things that he wants to share with you. So to spare your ears and spare my voice, let's dive right into Max's story. Welcome to the Gap Year Podcast, where we explore the who, what, where, when, and why of gap years. It's real people sharing their stories, ideas, and experts diving deep into how you can make the right decisions in order to have a meaningful gap year. This is the place to be no matter where you are on your gap year journey. I'm Michelle Dittmer, your resident gap year expert. Let's jump right in. Hi there, everybody, and welcome to the Gap Year Podcast. Today I have Max Brauch with me, and he had an incredible gap year that he's really excited to share with us today. And Max was actually the recipient of our very first gap year bursary that we had through the Canadian Gap Year Association. So we'll touch on that at the very end, but he's got a lot of other meaty things to share with us today. So Max, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And maybe you could just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm 19 years old. I'm a student currently at Concordia University in Montreal. I'm studying film production, which has actually been a passion of mine for a very, very long time. For basically most of my life, I've been making films and trying to pursue it. So it's pretty exciting that I get to be doing that in university. I'm originally from Toronto, but have been enjoying it in Montreal. I'm in first year. So yeah, lots of exciting things going on right now.
I love it. So you made the successful transition, like most students do, back into university after.
I did, yes.
And I say that because that's a big fear for a lot of parents is that their kid isn't going to go back. But you always had the intention of returning back to school, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. No, I absolutely did. Yeah, there is sort of a weird preconceived notion that gap years end up taking too long or people not going back to university. I think for me, the intention was always to go to university. That was originally my plan before I even actually considered taking the gap year, was to go straight to university. What ended up happening was that I actually didn't get into one of the programs that I wanted to, and instead of settling, I began to think about my options more and more and started to really consider taking a year off as a viable option and what that could actually mean. And I'm actually really happy that everything worked out in the way it did. I think at the time to not get into certain programs was definitely a bit disappointing, but I think in some weird way it was sort of meant to be, because taking the year off was like one of the best decisions I've made.
I think that's important that we highlight that it can be a huge disappointment, especially at that stage where all your friends are hearing about their acceptances, and we hear this conversation going on around us all the time about what success looks like, which is not all necessarily true, or like what real success is. And you were able to make that decision to take some time off, which I think is really important. But not only did you take time off, you turned it into a really productive year. Can you tell us a little bit about what you got up to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, there's such a pressure that I noticed, especially within high school, to pursue university, and that is the best option that will sort of lead to success right away. And once I really started looking into gap years, I realized that I could actually achieve a lot that I would not be able to if I was in university right now, if I took this year off. And so obviously film production, filmmaking is what I'm super passionate about. So I sort of sat down and was really like, if I am going to do this gap year, if I am going to sort of take this year for myself, how can I make the most out of it? How can I take the most advantage of it? And so there are a bunch of different things I set out to do, but one was to gain experience in that specific career path. So I actually was able to get on a TV show, and I worked on that TV show from about August until December of that year, so a pretty sizable chunk. And I actually was able to sort of upgrade my position a tiny bit on that show, and I was like making money, which was like amazing too, as I was learning about all of this real, I was gaining all of this real on-set experience. After the TV show, I wanted to be able to take some time to do what I wanted. So after that, I worked and I wrote and directed a short film that I made over the course of the year. And then I also wanted to travel. So then at the very end of my gap year, I went on a 40-day trip to Guatemala with a small group of other people. And we sort of were able to go all throughout the country, learning a lot about its history, doing all kinds of different activities and stuff. So it's a pretty packed and pretty amazing year for sure. Very busy.
Yeah, I love that you set some intentions for yourself, and you recognize that this was an opportunity to do something that you couldn't do if you were a full-time student. And you really harnessed all of that. You did what so many artists or people looking to get into a particular field dream of doing. It's not just about sitting in a classroom and learning about how to produce a TV show, but you were physically on the ground doing that. So I love that you were intentional about it, and you were thought about it and thought about what opportunities could exist for you. So I think that is really cool. And you really did a little bit of everything on your gap year. So not only were you able to explore that, you were able to earn some money, you were able to take on a very specific personal project that you saw through from start to finish, and you got to travel. So I think you made the most of your year for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it was like really understanding once I committed to the gap year was this is not just something that could be fun. I mean, it obviously is, but I think this is also an amazing opportunity, and that's really what I was trying to view it as. I've talked to a lot of friends too, and the common fear with taking a year off is that, you'll end up wasting it, that it won't sort of amount to anything, or you'll just like spend the whole time just not really doing much. And that definitely was not what I wanted to do. It's sort of, no matter what I was going to do, I did want to commit to that. And so, I just took the time to really sort of plan it out and think about like what I value, what I want, what at the end of the year I want to sort of walk away and say like, I really did accomplish what I wanted to. I mean, obviously I had planned out a fair bit of what I wanted to do during my gap year, but I certainly hadn't planned out everything. I knew I wanted to make a film, but didn't necessarily know what I wanted. That sort of unfolded. I knew I wanted to travel, but didn't really know in what way or where I wanted to go. And then one of the great things about being able to talk to the Gap Year Association is being sort of asked questions of what kind of places I want to go, of what kind of traveling, and then being able to like be given all the like a list of all these different options, and then for me being able to sort of look into it, that was such a really big help in terms of like taking some of that stress away and being able to sort of work and sort of narrow it down with the help of people. So that was another big thing that I guess I wanted to just say, that you don't necessarily need to have everything planned out, and I'm very grateful that you guys were able to sort of give me advice here and there and help me out with crafting what that plan was going to look like.
Well, thanks for that shout out. I think it's really important to know that you don't have to be an expert in gap years. That's what we're here for.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so we can help take away some of that overwhelm. And that's something that Google can't do.
Yeah.
Google adds to the overwhelm when you start to do
Uh-huh.
those searches, but really understanding your personality and your goals for the year, we were able to take that information back and then go through our 10 years of experience in working with different organizations and curate a set of opportunities that aligned with where you wanted to go. And I know ending up with Operation Groundswell was the right fit for you based on your goals. And that's what we want to do, is we want to make gap years easier for people, less overwhelming, and we want to do that in any way possible. So thanks for the reminder to share that is one of the things we can do to help you.
Yes, of course.
And I think it's also important to know that the plans do shift and change, and you don't write anything in cement and concrete. Everything is going to shift and evolve over the course of your year, and that's a good thing. It means you're growing, you're learning, and you're defining what your year is going to look like as you go. I like that idea of committing to it, because I think some people have this preconceived idea that gap years happen by default, that you got no other options, therefore you're on a gap year. But you owned that, and you took the year by storm, which is such a really productive way to do it. And the earlier you can have that attitude, the better you can plan, and the more opportunities you can research, and the more people you can connect with to make those things happen.
No, well, it's pretty great. I think one of the things too about what I'm trying to pursue, which is like just trying to have a career within the film industry, is that university itself is not even a necessary criteria for trying to get a job within that. As helpful as it is, you don't need to go to school, and so I think that definitely helped too. I sort of realized that I didn't have any of this experience. And what was great is that I was able to make all these connections through it. I actually worked with some of the people on my short film that I met on set. So it was like this great thing of like one thing just leading to the other, and it's sort of just unfolding in front of me, which was just, I definitely had to work hard, but because I was doing all these things that I wanted to do, like at the end of the day, the things that I was passionate about, just made it just really fun. And so it was great, like also just being able to get a job in a place I'm passionate about was awesome. And then I'm making money too, which is always nice. And the thing I keep telling other people I've been recommending gap years to is it's nice to be able to go into university having a bit of money saved up. That's definitely been a huge support for me in terms of being able to just have some of those savings to support myself, which was a really good feeling. Some of that money ended up then going towards traveling and going towards the short film that I made too. So everything just sort of was connecting. It was a great feeling.
I think I just want to like underscore that idea of things unfolding in front of you, and the fact that you also articulated that it was hard work to do that, but because you were being intentional and because you were putting yourself out there, you started to build a network, and you started like different experiences and opportunities presented themselves because you had taken that bold first step to put yourself out there, and then things didn't just unfold, but you made them unfold. And I think that a skill that we don't learn when we're in school because we just don't have the opportunity is networking.
I had like some great people in the department who would sort of mentoring me, teaching me, and giving me all these little bits of advice. So that was super great. And when just sort of constantly working with people too, you sort of start to build these connections. So it really became not only just a way of networking, but I actually was making friends, and I developed these friendships with people who I would not have even got to meet if it wasn't for taking the off. Like that's was such an integral part of it too, is I made friends. Like that was, which was so awesome, and not only friends, but friends in that specific industry. So I could ask them for advice. They could help me on projects. So it was this sort of beautiful place for me where I could really sort of grow around these people who were like encouraging me and supporting me. So it was awesome.
I think it's so important to take some time to acknowledge that you saw within your own network people that could help you, and you reached out. And some people are like ashamed or embarrassed, or they're apologetic about using those connections, but that is how the world works, is reaching out to the people in your network. And if they don't know, they know somebody who does know.
Yeah.
So I think it's really intelligent of you to tap into the resources that you have. So I have people who are interested in getting into finance on their gap year, and they say, well, nobody's going to take on a high school student is in a bank. I said, well, do you know anybody in banking? Start there. Don't walk into TD's head office in Toronto and ask for a job there. You gotta work with who you know, and somebody is going to see something in you. Somebody is going to want to mentor or support you, because as humans, we want to help other people, especially if they have similar passions to us.
Yeah, I was very fortunate with some of those opportunities that I had, and I think I think everyone really has different like opportunities and advantages that they have based on their own sort of circle of people that they know too, that they can really utilize. It was really just seeing like what I had access to, and then how I could make the most of that, like harnessing my own kind of options. And I think again, like everyone, I try to communicate that too to like other, because I have friends from high school who are like a year or two younger than me too, who I've definitely tried to encourage to do the same thing. And it's, we all sort of have like things that we definitely can use to enhance that year off too, if you just look for it, I think.
One of the things that you said before we started recording, that this has been a life-changing opportunity for you. Do you want to elaborate on that comment a little bit?
I don't think you sort of talk about the ideas of gap years, the ideas of what's that sort of going to be. I mean, leaving high school in general is, I think, a super big moment for me. And the other really important thing was that instead of me rushing off right into school and like right after high school, I actually had time to like process a lot. I had a lot of time to do self-reflection, to think about where I'm at in my life, what values I sort of hold, and like what I sort of want from my life, from my career, from myself moving forward. And so it was really nice to be able to have all that time to do some like self-reflecting, have some me time. The other big thing was like traveling, in terms of what I was able to get from that. I think something that we talked about too while I was on traveling is you don't need to travel necessarily to change, but what it meant for me was being able to, again, make these awesome friendships and to see parts of the world that I wouldn't have been able to see, like by being able to get that bursary too. That was how I was able to sort of go off on that trip, and it meant that I could travel in a way I have never before, to learn about like other cultures, other histories, and so that was pretty incredible. I mean, I think between the three things, experience, my own work, and travel, it all sort of accumulates to me just sort of growing more as an individual, not feeling like a high school student, but like as an actual person, sort of finding my place in the world. And it meant I had a lot more confidence in how I sort of wanted to approach the next chapter of my life, and the kind of work I want to do, the ways I want to sort of experience the world around me, the kinds of jobs I want to have. Everything just sort of kept just connecting from one thing to the other. And it was weird because at the end of the year, I was sort of at a place where it felt surreal. I sort of couldn't really imagine that I was able to do all of this and like accomplish all of these things. And there was a real sense of pride in it too, I would say. I was the only really person I knew who took a year off. I didn't have any close friends either. And so that at first was kind of isolating, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people, that idea that everyone around you is doing something else and you're not. And that definitely was a bit difficult in the beginning. It's just seeing all my friends around me starting university, and it did feel a tiny bit like they're starting this next portion of their lives and I'm not. But then pretty quickly, once I started just really getting into it with the job, I started to really not view it like that at all and really view what I was doing as my own really important, like essential thing to my own growth. And so it meant that sort of isolation went away and I had a lot more comfortability too with my own independence. I gained a lot more independence throughout the year too, which is, I think, a really good feeling to have too, to feel comfortable enough. And that's been a huge part too, of being able to move forward with university, to have some self-reliance on myself too. So I learned a lot of different things.
I think, like, if I could just take that as a soundbite and play that to everybody considering a gap year, like that is such a beautiful piece that you just said there. There were so many heartfelt things that I can hear through your voice that are so true and are going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And I think one of the things that you said really, really resonated with me is that you found your place in the world and you found out who you are and who you want to be. And I think that is something that people don't necessarily set out to do in their gap year. They may have this idea that they're going to like find themselves, or these kind of like eat, pray, love ideas that are way out there. But I think through the very tactile and tangible things that you did, you truly have grown so much as a person. You talked about your independence, you talked about your confidence, your ability to build relationships, figuring out what your actual identity and who you are as a person, and who you are as an adult and not a high school student. I think is just such a beautiful way to sum up the power of a gap year.
Yeah, it really is that. And I think obviously I wanted things from it, but really when you're just able to set out these things that you have planned for yourself, able to set out these sort of little goals that you set up for yourself, it's sort of inevitable that you're going to end up coming out of it, learning a bit more about yourself and gaining a lot of new life experience that I really don't think I would have if I had not taken that. I mean, I know a lot of people, actually, to be honest, who sort of go straight into university and then who end up not really being happy with what they're doing. They're not really sure what they want, but they're just there. And it means that actually experience that they were going for in university in some ways is not really the most productive amount of, it's a bit of a waste of time, because then they're really pursuing things that they're not even sure if they want to or not. So another great thing was like really having the time off too, to be able to really consider what I wanted, if this was the right option. It sort of meant that I could test the waters too, because especially because when you're learning about things, you're only sort of learning about them in theory. To actually put those things in practice and to actually see if they hold up with your expectations of them is extremely valuable. And it meant that although it did work out for me, it meant that I still could have basically that entire year for me to be like, is this what I want? How does this feel for me in a real workplace setting? How does this feel for me to continue to do all these things? Is this really the right path for me? And I could have a lot of conversations with people about it, which was just super, super valuable.
And thank you for bringing that up too, because you kind of have this fairy tale gap year where things worked out. And I work with a lot of students who have that other experience that you're talking about, where they try something out and they think it's what they want to do, and they get into it, and oh man, it is not what they thought.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's still really valuable to have that experience because they were able to then adjust their course. So instead of committing to a 4-year program, they were able to spend the rest of their year then figuring out what that plan B was.
Yeah.
But plan A was wrong. So instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars and years of their life doing something that in the end was not going to be beneficial to them, they've actually adjusted their course a little bit earlier.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate in that I've just sort of known what I've wanted to pursue for a decent portion of my life, and that's sort of been the end goal for quite a long time, I guess. But I think if I didn't know, the year off is really great to be able to try those different things to see, well, if this isn't right, maybe I'll try this. If this isn't right, let's see how this feels. Like, you have this time to like be able to actually see. I think this, again, there's just such a pressure and stress on people to sort of, especially within, I think, high school in general, that, again, post-secondary, like university, college is what you need to do. That's like your way of finding success, which is also not even necessarily true for a lot of careers too. You don't necessarily need that kind of education depending on the job you want to pursue as well. So like, it really can be, it just sort of gives you the time to be able to flesh out and play with a lot of different ideas that you might be interested in.
I love that you use the word play, because I think that we've kind of squeezed that out of things, and everything is calculated now. Take this quiz and find out which profession you should be applying for, and we'll tell you the 6 schools you should consider applying to. And that's not how humans are constructed. We need that time to play and experiment and try different things, because we only know what we know and what we've been exposed to. So by taking that time on your gap year to expose yourself to different things, you've expanded your understanding of the world and how that's going to play into your future. So
well, it really allows you to just have the time to like push yourself out of your comfort zone a little in like different ways. And I think if you really sort of figure out like what ways you want to push yourself, it can be super, super beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about how you made that trip possible, because I think some people don't really understand the finances of a gap year, and a lot of people think that gap years are only for the rich who have lots of money and are going to fund this incredible around the world trip that's going to cost $100,000. But your model was different. You didn't come with an unlimited credit card to the table. So can you talk a little bit about the way that you were able to fund that trip?
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, that's just the thing, is it's as fun as it is. It's definitely not free. Things still cost money. It's definitely not like I wasn't paying for things. And that was a conversation too that I had at home with my family, is like, what is the budget? How can we make these things possible? And just, I mean, to bring it full circle, that's where the sort of Canadian Gap Year Association really came in, which was super important in a lot of ways. There was sort of a big discussion too, as my family were like, how can we find ways to support myself? And one was like, maybe being able to apply for some sort of bursary, some sort of thing which will allow me to be able to do these things. Because it's one thing to have the time to do something, but you also do at the end of the day need to have the resources to be able to do that specific thing too. Obviously, like I said, a great thing was being able to do the show meant that I could sort of have some money saved. But yeah, so being able to sort of not only have the support, but feel like there were people who were excited for my gap year and who wanted to support me was such a great feeling almost, because again, gap years can be isolating. So to sort of be able to get that sort of a gift, and to be able to think that, man, I have to make these people proud to some extent. Like, I'm being given this amazing opportunity. I am definitely not going to take advantage of that. I definitely need to use this to the best of my abilities.
I think that's great, and I think you said a couple things that are really important. Number one, having that conversation with your family about what the finances are going to look like, because gap years can be really expensive, or they can be less expensive. And I think it's important at the very beginning. And one of the reasons why in our gap year planning workshops and our gap year planning courses that we offer, we always start almost right at the beginning, having conversations with our families around expectations of appropriate activities and of appropriate budget. Because it's not something that should be putting you in debt. This opportunity should be something that is achievable. And I think by being creative in the ways that you tap into funding, I think that you can make things that might have seemed inaccessible a lot more accessible. There's tons of organizations that have financial aid. There's lots of bursaries that are out there for people who want to have these types of experiences. There's opportunities for fundraising. There's opportunities.
Yes.
There's opportunities for working. There's opportunities to find ways to close the gap between the funds you have available and the funds that are required for some sort of experiential learning or travel opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. The great thing about taking that year off, I mean, although it can seem a bit scary, but you really have so many options like at your disposal, and so many different ways you can choose to go about doing it. I definitely did not want to put myself in debt, especially if I was going to be going to university after. So yeah, it did mean having some conversations about what was feasible and what wasn't. But by having that pretty early on, it meant that the plan that I was creating was based on that. And so all the things could be achieved. It wasn't as if I had all of this stuff planned out and then was like, but I need to check if I can even be able to accomplish this. It was more like, this is sort of what we're starting with. And then what are the things that I can still do that are going to be extremely beneficial for me, but are still going to be actually feasible and you're going to be able to accomplish.
I love it. I think that reality check is really helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it put your mom's mind at ease as well to
yes,
know
I think so too.
That there was a plan in place, and it was financially accessible, and that it was going to be a transformative experience. And I think when your parents can be comfortable with your plan and your experience, it just makes everything so much smoother.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely have to shout out my mom, because she was a pretty big help with all of that planning too, and was super encouraging too, which was really great to have her support too.
Yeah, way to go, Mom. Amazing. Well, I think that this is a really great time to think about what advice you might give to maybe your grade 12 self, or somebody who is currently considering a gap year, because a lot of people think about it, but then they chicken out, or the societal pressure of going to university kicks in, and they don't have the confidence that you have. So if you could go back and talk to all those people who are maybe not sure of what their next steps are after high school, or they're considering a gap year, what would you say to them now that you are on the other end of it and you have a semester of university under your belt?
Yeah. I think really to take my time, to not rush. The end of grade 12 can be such a fast-moving, anxious time in a lot of ways. So much is happening, and you sort of thinking so far ahead about what the next part of your lives are. I think to really just take the time to sit down and think about not what you think you should be doing, but what really is going to be the best. I think with me until I really started taking or considering taking the off is really when I just began thinking about, I really began to really like sit down and think more about what I wanted and where I was in my life, and what I sort of needed in a lot of ways. I wasn't really thinking about that because you just get so concerned with applications and all that. And, university is always going to be there. Really, at the end of the day, you're always going to sort of be able to go and do that. But like, especially at this age, like this is such an exciting time. And, I think I really would want myself, my past self, to really sort of take the time to do a lot more self-reflecting, to really think about where he is at that point in his life and where he wants to be, not where he thinks he should be. And so, again, just having that time on my side to be able to just sort of not slow it down, but at least take a tiny bit of a break to really consider that. I think mental health-wise, high school, university in general, they definitely have a toll. I certainly had my fair share of moments within grade 12. So like also trying to think about what is best for my own personal health. What would I enjoy, and like what would make me happy right now? Like, again, like so many people I think go to university because it's not necessarily what they want, it's what they think they should be doing, and they don't know what else they would do. I think for me it just meant having an opportunity to really ask myself a lot of questions about myself, and to sort of try and learn more about myself and improve myself in a lot of ways.
I love it. I think that you have hit the nail on the head with just giving yourself permission to slow down. Giving yourself permission to tap into what you need as a person and not what society is telling you that you need. And I think that message should be just shouted from the rooftops. And I think that you fully embrace that on your gap year. And I hope that the folks who are listening to this episode really take that to heart and really give themselves permission, or their kids permission, or their students permission, no matter who they are, to slow down. And that, as you said, university, college, the workforce will all be there. It is not going anywhere. And so if you want or need that time, that you should be fully confident in your ability to take that time and then step into whatever the next stage is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I want to reiterate that isn't just to say that you sort of will take that year off and you'll instantly all these amazing things. Like, you definitely do need to put in the time. You're only sort of going to get as much out of it as you put into it. But I think it allows you to do all these other things that you wouldn't really be able to do if you weren't having that time. So really to think where your values lie and how you can sort of transform those into actually physical things that you can accomplish.
I love it. And you touched on so many things, and I'm not sure I've even told you about this, but we are launching a gap year certification, which will allow folks to have a credential that they can put on their LinkedIn profile or on their resume when they have taken a purposeful gap year. And one of the criteria is actually to spend some time reflecting on their personal identity. And the values tie so nicely into that, and what are the things that are truly important to you, and what are the things that shape you as a person and make you different than all of your friends and your peers. So I'm really glad that you put that in there. And it does take work, it does take time, it does take the ability to ask yourself the questions about who you are, and why you are the way you are, and how do you want to show up in the world. So I'm really glad that you pulled that out, because that is a huge piece that will help you align your life with the things that you value, and that is what leads to a really happy life and a really fulfilling life.
That was also really what was great about the traveling too, being able to sort of remove myself from my environment and to sort of reflect on it when I was away. Because when you're away from it all is when you're able to sort of realize what you value most and what sort of means a lot to you, what you want to change or what you want to sort of keep. And that was really sort of important. That was a big portion of being able to travel, at least for me, in terms of how I was able to sort of do a lot of that self-reflecting.
Yeah, I think getting out of that comfort zone, seeing a different way of life, recognizing what you miss when you're away from it, or what are the things that really resonate with you that you see iterated in somebody else's life, and getting out of your comfort zone and getting out of your own culture is such an acute way to really zone in on that. And that's one of the many, many benefits of traveling, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when are we going to be able to go to a launch of a film that you've produced? Is that coming up anytime soon?
That's a good question. I'm making a couple short films over the years in university. That's sort of the plan. And then I think when I graduate, the plan is to sort of go for making that first feature film. So, maybe in a couple of years or so, we'll see something. Fingers crossed.
Okay, well, you keep us posted.
I will.
And thank you so much for sharing your experience. I know that the listeners will have lots of things to talk about after finishing listening to this episode. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today, Max.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me.
I really hope you got some great insight out of Max's story. What an incredibly articulate Gapper who is just bearing all of his stories for us. Now, if you do find yourself in a situation where you are considering a gap year, or you want some support to see what might be possible for you, we've got a ton of things coming up in the month of May and June. We know it's a critical time for making these decisions, and getting that support is absolutely critical. We've been doing this for over 10 years, and we really want to support you in this time, making the right decision for your family, then making sure that your year is purposeful. So whether you're exploring what you could be doing on that year or wanting to get involved in our gap year certification program, head over to CanGap.ca and we will definitely be able to support you on your journey. And as always, if you need any individual support, please just book a call with us, CanGap.ca/call, and we would be more than happy to spend 30 minutes with you absolutely free of charge to help get you kick-started and making the right decision for your family. So until next time, keep on adventuring.